When we are looking at a pro wrestling show, we can sometimes wonder when the suffering of the wrestlers is real or fake. As you might expect, what they are going through physically is indeed painful. Throughout their careers, they have to deal with injuries, some of which may never recover of them. It's a pleasure to meet you on the Wrestling Paradise to introduce you to the most shocking injuries in the WWE. Are you ready to be shocked to learn how Stone Cold Steve Austin has already broken the neck of one of his opponents? Do you want to know more about how Cody Rhodes managed to use an injury in a creative way? Do you want to find out how Brock Lesnar once sent one of his colleagues to the hospital by accident? And are you curious to learn why Shawn Michaels' best matches could have very well never happened? You have come to the right place, because in our video we will see together a succession of violent moments that had important consequences on the careers of some wrestlers. You are on the Wrestling Paradise, WWE's most shocking injuries. Here we go. Let's start with an injury that took place during the 1998 Royal Rumble. On that day, the legend Shawn Michaels defended his WWE title against The Undertaker in a matchup that is now a wrestling classic. This is a casket match where you have to put your rival in a coffin to win. Usually we remember this confrontation for its outcome, during which Kane, Taker's brother, came to put him in the coffin and set him on fire. However, something else remarkable happened there. Indeed, Shawn Michaels also injured his back. This took place when The Undertaker swung him outside the ring. Mr. WrestleMania hit the coffin in his fall and landed badly on the ground. We must be sufficiently aware of the seriousness of this injury. A few months later, just after losing his title to Stone Cold Steve Austin, Michaels will no longer wrestle in a WWE ring for 4 years. He was forced to retire. But fortunately for us, he will be able to return to the ring in 2002 to offer us a collection of masterpieces. At one time, Wade Barrett was seen as one of the next big WWE stars, being the leader of the dominant Nexus clan. However, for multiple reasons, his career wasn't as successful as it could have been. In particular, he suffered an injury, like many of his colleagues. You should know this was a period when he was his memorable Bad News Barrett character, whose specialty was to come and bring us bad news with his little gravel.
I've got some bad news.
One day he suffered an attack from his colleague Jack Swagger. He swung him into the barrier around the ring twice. Unfortunately, Barrett could not take this shock well and dislocated his shoulder. It is an injury that will keep him away from the ring for several months, and that will force him to have surgery. He will tell that he does not blame his colleague for this injury, but we could see that this probably dissuaded the company officials from pushing him more. As you may know, reliability and not being injury-prone are important criteria for success in this federation. It's a shame, because Wade Barrett had several qualities of an excellent superstar. Samoa Joe is one of those wrestlers who could have had a much better career in the WWE. With his imposing physique and his intimidating look, he was awesome in his rivalry with Brock Lesnar, for example, in 2017. Unfortunately, injuries had influence on his career. First of all, in January 2020, he was partnered with Kevin Owens to face Seth Rollins and Buddy Murphy when he did one of his suicidal dives that he likes to do. But on that evening, the move didn't go exactly as planned. His skull will hit the ground directly in his fall. As we can imagine, this immediately had consequences. He had a concussion. This moment showed us how risky this dive is for wrestlers. But that's not all. A few weeks later, Samoa Joe participates in a commercial for the Federation. During the filming, he will suffer a powerbomb from the Authors of Pain team. He will fall on the commentator's table, which his head will hit violently, with a new concussion in the end. After that, the Federation will decide not to use Samoa Joe in an in-ring role for a long time because of these injuries. The following injury concerns wrestler Taka Michinoku. It took place at the 2000 Royal Rumble, where the Japanese will appear as part of the Kai and Tai team. What is quite crazy is that he was not even an official participant in the famous Battle Royale. However, this will not prevent him from remembering this scene for the rest of his life. Indeed, his colleagues Big Boss Man and Gangrel, who were much taller and bigger than him, will swing him outside the ring. They really didn't hold back, since Michinoku will smash his head on the floor. We can only imagine his pain, especially on such hard ground. This moment is a little different from the usual injuries, since the company is usually discreet when one of its wrestlers gets injured. They will try to divert the viewer's attention from the injury, not insist too much on it to quickly move on, especially if it is shocking. However, there will be many replays of Taka Michinoku's fall, not taking it very seriously. This shock caused him a concussion and even broke his collarbone. A few years before making a triumphant return to the WWE and win the Supreme Belt, Cody Rhodes suffered a memorable injury. You should know that the American Nightmare is no stranger to physical problems, since he even wrestled with a torn pectoral in 2022. However, it is a slightly less serious injury that we are going to talk about. We are on SmackDown, one of the Federation's weekly shows, in January 2011. It's a time when Cody was still far from his American Nightmare character. He was dashing Cody Rhodes, a young man obsessed with his beauty. However, in a match against Rey Mysterio, he injured his face, the most important part of his body for him. With his 619 move, Mysterio simply broke his nose. What makes this injury so memorable is not really its physical impact, but the way Cody used it. Indeed, he created a new character out of it, undashing Cody Rhodes, someone who is convinced he's ugly and who is so ashamed of himself that he hides behind a transparent mask. It was very well found, and it brought an even deeper dimension to him. It is to Cody's credit that he chose to do something creative from this instead of suffering it. You've probably already heard of Brock Lesnar, this super powerful wrestler who was also the UFC heavyweight champion. He is an intimidating athlete who is capable of doing great damage, and his colleague Hardcore Holly was able to fully realize it. We are on SmackDown when the two men face off in the ring. It was a time when Brock was the Federation's new star with a meteoric rise. Nevertheless, with Holly, an incident came to tarnish this rise a little bit. Indeed, he will do a powerbomb on him that will break his colleague's neck. Hardcore Holly explained afterwards that they did not execute the maneuver correctly, being both tired, especially since Lesnar was sick. Some of the fans will consider that he intentionally injured him, but the victim completely denied that. Holly confided that after the match, Brock apologized to him many times, that he even called him when he was in the hospital. Clearly, Lesnar felt sorry about it. This injury shows us that it only takes one moment of exhaustion to endanger someone's health in wrestling. These days, Christopher Nowinski is a concussions expert. He works a lot to inform about pro wrestling's neurological repercussions on its actors. What makes him legit to talk about it is the fact he had a severe injury in the ring himself. We are at the 2003 Royal Rumble when he will be the victim of a maneuver that ends his career. While we are in this decisive battle royale, Nowinski gets Edge and Rey Mysterio on him, who jump on him from the top rope. However, we can notice that the Canadian and the Luchador did not jump exactly at the same time. They were not perfectly synchronized. Edge will land on his colleague while he was already on the mat. That will break his nose and especially cause him a concussion. Watching this entertaining moment, it's hard to realize that it had major repercussions on Christopher, who will wrestle for a few more months but will never recover from it. It will force him to retire. So all it takes is a simple moment where two wrestlers may not have communicated enough to crush someone's dreams. When Johnny Gargano was on the NXT show, fans were used to see a lot of acrobatics, very risky moments, and all kinds of dives. It's almost a miracle that there were never any dramatic injuries. In any case, the scene we are going to talk about happened on August 19, 2020, when Johnny Gargano faced Ridge Holland there in one of the shows. Several minutes in the match, Holland powerslams Gargano. In the process, he lands headfirst on the ring mat, which usually causes serious injuries.
For 20 years, I have never seen an injury.
Seeing the impact again, we can only feel bad for Johnny. Fortunately, the referee and the doctor were immediately able to go check if he was okay. The show was not broadcast live, which will enable the company to delete this sequence during editing. He will finally resume the match, but we still wonder how he didn't seriously injure his neck. This is typically the kind of moment that can end a career. We can acknowledge Gargano's resistance and solidity in this scene, who did very well in the end. As you probably know, there are not only TV shows in the WWE. Throughout the year, wrestlers also do untelevised shows. Nevertheless, this does not prevent them from going all out to entertain the crowd at their own risk. In Christian's case, it even caused him an injury. The Canadian was one of the main superstars in 2011 when he had a match against Sheamus in November in Brussels. The Belgian fans were entitled to a match between two important wrestlers, but it didn't turn out exactly as they probably hoped. In a sequence that might seem random, Christian slips between the Irishman's legs. This maneuver that he may have executed with too much haste will twist his ankle. In the aftermath, we will see the Canadian limp. His colleague Sheamus, seeing that he had a problem, was smart enough to directly go the finish of their match, in this case his devastating brogue kick. Clearly, Christian was no longer in condition to wrestle properly. He will have a sprained ankle that will force him to step away from the ring for a few weeks. Finally, we will talk about an injury that is not very famous but which is nevertheless symbolic. It concerns none other than the Texas Rattlesnake, Stone Cold Steve Austin. As you probably know, he is one of the most famous wrestlers, but his career has been influenced a lot by injuries. We especially remember the piledriver he suffered at the 1997 SummerSlam, which almost paralyzed him for life. It is because of injuries that he will move away from the ring in 2003. However, earlier in his career, he already experienced exactly the same situation as in 1997, but the roles were reversed. Indeed, it is 1992 when Austin faces Masahiro Chono in a match in Japan, as part of the partnership between his employer, WCW, and New Japan Pro Wrestling. He will do the piledriver there, the same one Owen Hart will do on him 5 years later, and he will break his opponent's neck too. Instead of making him land on his thighs, his skull goes on the mat, which should absolutely never happen. When we know he will suffer the same thing a few years later with equally serious repercussions, it seems like it was some kind of karma for the Texas Rattlesnake. And that was it for these most shocking injuries in the WWE. Seeing the physical price that wrestlers pay in the ring to entertain us, we can only respect them. On a daily basis, they endanger their health. We may not realize it enough, but a second of distraction part can have dramatic repercussions for them. In the end, the biggest superstars are the ones who manage to come back stronger from all these injuries. This makes me offer you a debate in your eyes: which wrestler has been able to manage the best the physical problems he experienced in his career? We invite you to come and give your opinion. It will be interesting to talk about it together in the comments and to share our opinions. We can say that pro wrestling really is a crazy world. I hope you had a good time watching this video, and I invite you to stay on the paradise of wrestling to look at some other ones. See you right away.
And that's the bottom line, 'cause Stone Cold said so. What?